I'm the president of Environmental Health Trust, an organization that's been around now for 15 years, and we have been working along with colleagues such as those you've heard from earlier today to make sure people understand the full impact of electromagnetic fields on our lives and those of everything around us. Every living being, from plant to animal to humans, is alive because of electromagnetic fields and is subject to them. And we at Environmental Health Trust have worked tirelessly to document those impacts through a series of scientific meetings and publications that you can find on our website. Today, I'm going to talk just briefly about research I was privileged to do with Malka Halgamug. She is an expert in computer science and information systems. She produced an article in 2017 which looked at the impact of weak radiofrequency radiation and its impacts on plants. And in that study, she found that in almost 9 out of 10 of the studies she looked at found significant impact on the physiology or morphology, that is the functioning or the shape of these plants. And the plants were particularly vulnerable if they were maize, roselle, pea, fenugreek, duckweeds, tomato, or onions. And plants, like people, are more responsive to certain frequencies. Subsequent to meeting her, she and I then did an analysis further, and we looked at the specific types of impacts, and we specifically looked at different algorithms that can be applied. And what we showed was that if you looked at DNA damage in plants, and you can look at DNA damage directly in plants, you can look at chromosomal aberrations in plants, and micronuclei, which are exquisitely sensitive measures of DNA functioning, that you can predict from the RF EMF studies how those plants will be affected adversely. And we were able to show by the different systems of classification that there was a significant effect on these plants, looking at different types of data within the system and looking at different algorithms for looking at patterns in these studies. What makes the plant studies particularly pertinent is that when you look one level up at the tiny little zebrafish, which is an animal that has been well studied in toxicology for years, you find something very interesting. A 2020 study looked at whether or not there were birth defects, teratogenic effects in embryos, and did not follow those animals to further development, even though they showed some subtle indications of suppressed activity in things like a startle response. But a subsequent study looked at greater detail and let those embryos grow to adults. And what they found is that the embryos that grew to adults had a significant damage to their behavior as measured by a number of, again, standard assays that we look at in these laboratory animal fish. And the effects were at frequencies used in 5G. Now, in 2021, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia issued a ruling based on a lawsuit that we filed in 2020. Our lawsuit challenged the FCC when it said, trust us, there's no need to revise any of the standards that we've had for cell phones or related devices, which were set in 1996. The same limits that were set then should apply now to all of this technology that is going to be unfolding. And what the court did is it actually looked at the evidence. And the most important thing it said is that it could not find any indication that the FCC had actually read the substantial record of scientific evidence on long-term exposure, the vulnerability of children. And the 2021 decision specifically said that the FCC had completely failed even to acknowledge, let alone to respond to comments concerning the impact of RF radiation on the environment. Environmental effects have never been considered by the FCC in deciding what the standards ought to be. So as a consequence of that ruling, we're now in a situation where we have been, as Senator Blumenthal noted years ago, flying blind. There has been no one paying attention to the need to protect wildlife, plants, or animals, nor frankly for the rest of us. And now we have provided additional evidence to them in the past year. Environmental Health Trust actually submitted work done by Albert Manville, Blake Levitt, Henry Lai, and others. So the FCC currently has that, which they have also not acknowledged, nor is there any indication that they are taking seriously what this court ruling said to them in 2021. Thanks to the efforts of all of you on this call today, we hope to change that. Thank you.